We learned last week that there's going to be an announcement from Steel Wool on August 4th, and almost everyone is sure that it's either going to be a Help Wanted 2 DLC or the next FNAF game by the company. If that happens to be a new game, a lot of people are theorizing that it's going to be about Fall Fest. But that leaves the question, what would that even look like? Why would there be lore, and what would it tell us about the timeline? Well, since Help Wanted 2's flat mode came out, I was able to go out of bounds myself, and I may have just found the secret that answers those questions. So slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. So what is Fall Fest? And why does everyone think it's going to be the setting of the next Steel Wool FNAF game? Well, admittedly, information on Fall Fest is relatively sparse. We have a lot of references to Fall Fest, but not a lot of direct information about it. Although these references do date back quite a while, all the way back to Help Wanted 1 in fact. When the Curse of Dreadbear DLC came out for Help Wanted 1, we were greeted to a new lobby, one in the middle of the woods with a sign that said Fall Fest 83. Looking around this lobby, it's definitely in the FNAF 4 woods. After all, the FNAF 4 house is literally in the background, along with a windmill and a giant lake. All of this surrounded by a bunch of dead trees. Nothing is too of note here, but it's important to establish what this looks like to reference other minigames to link them to Fall Fest. For example, the Foxy Corn Maze, which is almost certainly in Fall Fest, features the same windmill as well as a water tower. So we can assume wherever Fall Fest was, there was a windmill and a water tower very nearby. Other things to keep in mind about this iteration of Fall Fest is it is within Help Wanted, which then implies that this is something Fazbear created to show to the public, so we can't fully trust what we're seeing here. It is worthwhile to note that it's filled with Fazbear animatronics and characters. Finally, whenever you collect a prize in the Curse of Dreadbear levels, you're taken inside the barn where there seems to be some sort of birthday party going on. But that's pretty much all we get about Fall Fest in Help Wanted 1. Like, it shows us the idea of Fall Fest, but it doesn't really delve into it or tell us what it was about. But after Help Wanted, we got Special Delivery. I've talked extensively on Special Delivery and what it tells us about Fall Fest in a video that you can watch right here. But for the sake of this video, I'll touch on it again. Special Delivery featured a DLC AR event called Dark Circus, where it was essentially an escape room that you would face off against animatronics and try to solve puzzles to get through. Now, it should be noted, never in this DLC are the words Fall Fest ever stated, but it's notable that this is a carnival attraction in a circus with a hay and straw floor with fire hazards all over the place. So it does kind of seem like it would have been a part of Fall Fest. And keep in mind what I said about the fire hazard thing. There's literally barrels of oil and fireworks with a dry straw floor and thin wooden walls in this attraction. It's literally like as close to a bomb as a building can be. So is this Fall Fest? Well, it may have been an attraction at a Fall Fest, but look around. It seems very purposefully scary and self-referential, not unlike Fazbear's Fright from FNAF 3. And the fire hazards here are so over the top to the point that it might be on purpose and fake. Not to mention the whole thing seems fairly up to date with new animatronics that haven't been seen before. Almost as if this whole thing is up to date and purposefully scary, rather than authentically aged that you might have seen at the time. So to me, this reads as a new attraction that Fazbear put up to play on the past ideas about Fall Fest. Much like Help Wanted in general, something new that Fazbear is creating to make light of the past and previous allegations of the company. Stop going out here. The green screen ends here, Riley. Now, this has all been good so far, but a lot of the meat and potatoes we get about Fall Fest are within Help Wanted 2, which is why that game is the main focus of today's speculation. And Help Wanted 2 is flooded, relatively, with information on Fall Fest. For one, and this is possibly the biggest one, the background of the claw machine where you get prizes out of is a Fall Fest poster. In fact, it's a stylized poster with the Freddy and Friends on tour designs performing at a Fall Fest with the marionette in the background. This is huge, and it possibly even gives us a time frame to look at this poster within. And not to mention, this poster in general is a massive piece of information, but the fact that you have to look at it after literally every minigame seems important to me. And honestly, that's just the start. One of the prizes you could win is this poster, stating Fall Fest 1970. On this poster, we get the additional detail, albeit stylistically, of a big top tent, pointing to something more circus-like. So these posters are cool and all, and they give us more information into the time frame, but this game goes even further and gives us more minigames set within what seems to be Fall Fest. It's heavily speculated that FNAF is meant to be styled as if it were a part of Fall Fest. I mean, it has the pumpkins, the lantern, the hay, you're outside in a Curse of Dreadbear-like environment, and you're playing a carnival game. To me, this screams Fall Fest. Not to mention that same water tower and windmill that we saw in the Curse of Dreadbear DLC. But when you look at the games we're actually playing, they couldn't have taken place in a Fall Fest. After all, the very first minigame in this location features glamrock animatronic designs and a song from the Super Mega Pizzaplex. So is this, like the Dark Circus, a new event, or is this just a new game within an old event? It's honestly hard to tell, not to mention the fact that Help Wanted 2 is not Help Wanted 1. Help Wanted 1 is an in-universe game made by Fazbear specifically to present to the public, whereas we really aren't fully sure what Help Wanted 2 is. Are we going through our own memories or security camera footage? Or is this just the day-to-day jobs of an employee at the Pizzaplex? And if it is a day-to-day job, why does he go to the sister location bunker or to these outside attractions? Something doesn't add up here. It really makes you wonder if FazerBlast is a current attraction or not. But if it is a current attraction, would that make Carnie a new animatronic? Put a pin in that, we'll come back to it. For now, we'll move on to the other heavily Fall Fest associated minigame, the Carousel. Similarly, this minigame has a lot of speculation saying that it might be a part of Fall Fest. The Carousel itself seems very old-fashioned, using similar designs to what we see in FNAF 2, and we're fairly certain the toys in FNAF 2 were modeled after the toys of the time. It features Sun and Moon, which seem to be older animatronics than we realize, and of course, most obviously, there's the pumpkin, the hay, and the lantern again. At a first glance, the only other thing linking this to Fall Fest and other minigames is the fact that it ends in fire, just like the FazerBlast minigames do. Between both of these ending in fire and all the fire hazards at the Dark Circus, it really seems like a fire is really important to Fall Fest in some way. Now, for a while that was it, but Help Wanted 2's Flat Mode came out. And after playing through it, it doesn't seem like Steel Wool added any teasers for future games like they have in the past, which is totally fine. However, now that it's a mouse and keyboard game, it's a lot easier to go out of bounds with a program like Universal Unreal Unlocker, which I did on stream, and I'm doing again today on stream at 9:30 p.m. EST. You can either find that here on the channel and subscribe to see it, or I'll also stream everything on Twitch at twitch.tv/RightHostYT. Thank you very much for following. That'd be really cool, actually. You should do that. Thank you. Anyway, last week I found something that I thought was huge. We actually found a few things and we'll be going over them, but pertinently, if you go out of bounds at the carousel level, you can see that same windmill and water tower. Further evidence showing that this carousel took place at Fall Fest. Not only that, but you can see the skeleton of a barn, a very similar skeleton to the one that we see in Help Wanted 1's Fall Fest. And furthermore, in the hard mode of carousel, it ends with a fire. And if you go out of bounds and look, there's fire all over the place, but there's a big centralized fire in the barn with a path leading directly to the carousel. Now, I'll be very honest. At first, I thought I was one of the first people to discover this because I did it the day that Flat Mode came out, not realizing that like 6 months ago, Horoscoped put a video going out of bounds in Help Wanted 2 and pointed out this exact same thing.
I wonder what kind of lore implications this could have given all the carnival hints.
Yeah, I wonder if there are any lore implications. So putting all of this together, what do we have for a potential future Fall Fest FNAF game? What lore or evidence do we have so far? Well, Fall Fest seems to be an ongoing annual circus/carnival. And yes, I know that the circus and the carnival are two different things, but Five Nights at Freddy's uses those terms interchangeably, so when talking about FNAF, I will as well. And it was ongoing from at least 1970 to 1983. It seems that they held birthday parties within the barn, and it seems very important that a fire happened at a Fall Fest, possibly starting within said barn. We can also infer that Fazbear is trying to bring back Fall Fest, not only with Dark Circus, but the fact that they're presenting Fall Fest to us in Help Wanted. And in both of these iterations, they seem to very purposely lean into the horror associated with the event, as well as fire hazards. This is all well and good, but there's one other piece of evidence that I think can help further steer where we're going here, and that's something I've neglected to mention so far: the similarities between Lefty and Carnie. And one specific similarity that I haven't seen anyone talk about yet. Many people believe that Lefty was a refitted Carnie animatronic, or in other words, that Carnie was an older animatronic, and when making the pizzeria simulator, Henry reused that animatronic to create Lefty. And there's merit to this. I mean, they basically have the same model, just with a different paint job, and in the Help Wanted 2 gallery, they're making the exact same pose. But what if that theory is wrong? It's no surprise that Lefty is a Rockstar animatronic, the line of animatronics that Henry specifically made for the pizzeria simulator. He fits right in physically with the way his mouth works and his general physicality, and sure, the other line of animatronics that are very present in this game, the mediocre melodies, have similar physical appearances. There are distinct differences. After all, the mediocre melodies are strapped to battery packs, and something that I was able to find in Help Wanted 2's flat mode now that we can go out of bounds, the endoskeleton is different. When you look inside of Pig Patch, one of the mediocre melodies, you see that he has a very disc-based endoskeleton. But when looking inside Lefty, it's this squarish, boxy design. And these aren't just random endoskeletons or reused assets. Every other animatronic in this game has the endoskeleton we know they're supposed to have. Captain Foxy has an Endo 01, the Glamrocks have the Glamrock endos, and the sister location animatronics have their weird, wiry amalgamations. So it begs the question, what about Carnie? Lo and behold, he has the exact same endoskeleton as Lefty, likely the same one as the rest of the Rockstar animatronics. So why does this matter? Well, if Carnie truly was much older than Lefty, and instead was created closer to when the mediocre melodies were originally created, you would think they would have the similar endoskeleton, or at least that Carnie would have a wholly different endoskeleton from Lefty, an animatronic ostensibly made much later in the timeline. But it doesn't. It has the same one that Lefty does, or the Rockstar animatronic endoskeleton in general. Speaking of the Rockstar animatronics, something about this theory always rubbed me the wrong way. We know that the Rockstar animatronics were made specifically for the FNAF 6 fake pizzeria for Henry's plan. So why would he make 4 original brand new state-of-the-art animatronics and then reuse an old animatronic for arguably the most important one? The other Rockstars are just there to fill up space and make the pizzeria seem more real. Meanwhile, Lefty is specifically created to do a very delicate task, so why would that be the one where he cut corners on? So how do we explain this? How does Carnie have the same exact endoskeleton as Lefty, a Rockstar animatronic, but it doesn't seem like Carnie came out before Lefty? What if instead of Lefty being a refitted Carnie, Carnie is a repainted and refitted Lefty? After all, like I've mentioned before on this channel, we never see Lefty burn at the FNAF 6 pizzeria. We see on screen Molten Freddy, Scrap Baby, and William Afton burn and melt away before our eyes, but we're never shown Lefty on fire. Where was Lefty? Did Henry keep him around in the hopes that he might be able to bring back Charlotte? It's unclear, but it's very possible at the least that Lefty's exoskeleton was mostly intact, along with his endoskeleton. And modern Fazbear is much more likely to reuse and cut corners, at least more likely than Henry is. So if modern Fazbear finds the FNAF 6 pizzeria and sees a mostly intact, weird version of Freddy, then why wouldn't they just repurpose it? Ultimately, why does this matter? Why am I arguing that Carnie comes after Lefty? Am I here to say that Charlotte is back because of this? No, I don't think so anyway, at least not in Carnie. But what this does tell us is that Fazbear is making new animatronics for Fall Fest. If Carnie is a new animatronic, then that means Fazbear is making new things for an upcoming Fall Fest event. So to bake our evidence into a theory, I'm suggesting that the next Steel Wool FNAF game will be a modern Fall Fest. Fazbear is bringing back the tradition with brand new attractions that are spooky and play on those old rumors about terrible fires, not to mention all those inflammatory comments. In this game, however, we'll unlock the lore as to what happened in the original Fall Fest and how it affected the following timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's. So the big question of that is, what would the lore of the original Fall Fest be? Why would that fire matter? Truthfully, I don't have any solid information to add there. It would be heavy speculation, but that's why you're here, isn't it? I have a pretty good educated guess. It's very, very low on the evidence scale, but I think it makes sense with the evidence we currently have. Something that shows up a lot in Ruin is Cassie's birthday. We see happy birthday in the quest markers, Roxy remembers Cassie's birthday, and a pivotal moment of her backstory is when nobody showed up to her birthday party except for Gregory. Nobody showed up, which ostensibly includes her own father who worked at the Pizzaplex. So where was he? Was he already kidnapped at this point? Well, then she would have been living on her own while the Pizzaplex was still in operation, which seems weird. But if he's not dead or kidnapped, why else would he have avoided his own daughter's birthday party? Unless he avoids every birthday party, because when he was very young, his birthday party ended in tragedy. Maybe, just maybe, at the early Fall Fest, in the barn where they held their birthday parties, it's Cassie's dad whose birthday party ended in flames, ending the entire tradition of Fall Fest, and possibly setting into motion the very mechanisms that began the entire franchise. After all, if Cassie's dad is our player in Help Wanted 2, what makes him so special? What do you think? What are your thoughts on the next Five Nights at Freddy's game? And specifically, why do you think the fire of Fall Fest matters? Because that's the only thing I can think of. In the meantime, if you want to hear more about what all was announced is coming out in the beginning of August, I made a whole video covering the news last week. Oh, you almost made it. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share it with #RyTart. A huge thank you to the best channel members, the Dough Risers. And until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.